Thank you for tuning into our podcast. We are coming to you from Chicopee, Massachusetts. I am your host, Carrie, and joining me is Holyoke's very own local historian and creator of the historical tours of Greater Holyoke, Robert Camus. He offers both public and private tours, as well as presentations of the local canal systems, reservoirs, cemeteries, and churches, as well as various parks and streets in Holyoke, South Hadley, and Chicopee, Mass. Now you actually lead these tours and give these presentations yourself, is that correct?
Yes, and this was a very popular company.
And today he'll be educating us on the National Blank Book. So tell us about this company.
This is by far the most popular company to work for in Holyoke. They love to work here, and employees love to stay there. They stayed right to the end. This is one of the last companies ever to close down in Holyoke. And I have to tell you about, along the way, the town family and how the mill might have changed through time and what happened to it in the company. It's gone. But the company itself made books that were lined or charted, and they're blank papers, put on lines, specialities, such as an accountant book, a student line book for composition, a scientist or a doctor's medical books, charts for scientists. They made these books for very special reasons, and it was a very important business because no one was really doing this on a grand scale throughout the United States, and they became the best blank book company in the whole country. So what was the company like? What was history like? All right. It started off by the father, Jamestown, and he started from another small business in New York City. He took over. He was a worker at a business, and this little business started in 1843. And when he took over, he made it grow and grow in New York City. Then one of his sons, Edward Town, in 1881, decided that he was going to move the business into Holyoke, because Holyoke was a paper city, lots of paper around, and so he would cut back on costs of getting the paper into New York City by moving to Holyoke. And at first they were stationed in the Innovation Building of Holyoke on Cabot Street, which was made by Holyoke Water Power in order to get smaller companies developed. And they started, of the three sections of this Innovation District Mill, they were in the one that lined parallel to Cabot Street, and they were on the second floor. And from 1881 to 1898, they were there. In 1898, they decided to move into their own building finally. And they were down by a section of the second level canal, and it would feed its water into the Connecticut River from there, and that's where they were getting their power. They had a beautiful building. It was on Canal Street itself. It didn't touch the river, but a business behind it, White and Wyckoff Card Company, did touch the river. So these two companies were down there. It was blended so well into its environment that it arched because there was a train coming through on a curve, so the building itself also arched. Now, it existed and changed drastically. It built a second mill at some point, and then it enlarged its own mill, and it got bigger and bigger because their production increased drastically through the years.
So tell us about the town family.
Okay, now Jamestown started up the family, but his three sons are the ones that took it over and they brought it into Holyoke. Edward Town is one of those three brothers that brought the business into Holyoke itself, and he would develop it. But he would share roles with the other Town brothers, and those brothers, all three brothers lived in Holyoke, so I'll tell you about each one of them. But Edward Town himself, he in the beginning was the owner and the president. He had a house on Northampton Street. It was the very last house on Northampton Street, and before they cut up to Mount Park or the White Street Reservoir. And the house is still there. He had his house, it was a very beautiful house. He had it landscaped by the Olmsted brothers. It doesn't still look very much like they made it, but it still has a curving driveway like they preferred greatly. And the three brothers, again, they would share. The three Town brothers would share their responsibility within the company. And the next important brother is Joseph Town, and he would develop his house at 181 Linden Street. He also would develop into a homestead designed landscape. It was a home that he didn't make just for himself. He bought it for himself. The first owner in this house was a William Sims, and then a William Fairfield Whiten, and a Dr. Sells. But Joseph Town would come around as the fourth owner and own the house from 1921 to 1962. And he was the one that developed it with his wife into an homestead secret garden for his sons. And his wife would do a lot of great things for the community. Now, the last brother, Frank Town, later became the president and the treasurer of the National Blank Book. And he was the only brother of the three that didn't have his landscape developed by the Olmsted brothers. And you can tell by looking at it, it's a very much simpler landscape. His house was on the very upper part of Appleton Street, across from the Holy Cross Church. It's now being used as a rectory for that church. And so the Town brothers were very loved around Holyoke. They were greatly respected for who they were. When one of the Town brothers, the Frank Town, when he died, on the front of his gravestone was put a plaque that the workers of the company had paid for on their own. And it told how much they had loved, very much working for him.
So quickly before we continue with the rest of our interview, just to fill our listeners in, if you want to find out more information or sign up for any of his various tours, you can check out his website at holyokecanaltour.org. And there he has both videos of the various stops along each tour and also past and present photos of the historical sites throughout as well. And if you're interested in setting up a private tour, you can email him directly at bobcat4214B@yahoo.com. And they are perfect for fun and educational outdoor activities for the whole family or for your group parties, especially those special occasions and get-togethers. And they're also good just for getting outdoors for the day. So getting back to our interview, how did this mill change through time?
All right. Now, I told you the story about how it started out on Cabot Street and the innovation mill that the Holyoke Water Power Company owned. And they were on the second floor of that building. And they grew and grew, and they were able to build their own mill in 1898. And that was down by the very end of the second level canal, close to the Connecticut River. Now, at some point, they built another mill. I think it was 1906, and there was two mills to the north of this one. That's because their production was growing so great. So besides the major one mill, they had their own other company, and that was mostly for storage. And so they changed greatly with the years. Now I'm trying to describe what their mill looked like. You remember that these mills have functions that change by the floor. And the reason why you want everything done in the same area, and so I'll give you a breakdown. But this one down right in front of the White and Wyckoff was also near the railroad station, the Riverside train station. And it was a 5-story building. And the breakdown was it had one section towards the west and one section towards the east. And I'll tell you what they did in each particular floor. In the basement, they had storage and they cut materials. On the first floor, they had the stock ready to be made. That is that they had the paper coming in from other companies around Holyoke, and nothing was done to it yet. It was not made into a book, it was not lined, so forth. On the second floor, they had finishing and inspecting, and what they did there is that they would take the books, they would bring them up to the very highest floor. A lot of these floors worked by having it come on the ground floor, bringing them up to the highest floor, and there working downwards. And you put them in shafts and bring it to the next floor downwards. All right, and the third floor, they would have the magazine department. That means the department at which they would bind the books into the cover of it. And then the fourth floor, they'd make it up and sew, and that's where you would actually sew the pages together and also put the lines onto it. And then they had the western section. So there's two very big sections of this, and I'll tell you about that section. The first section I'll tell you about is the very, very top floor. So it'll come down. So this is 5 floors high, this western section. And they put the rules lines right into the paper, whether it's horizontal lines or vertical and horizontal lines to make a chart. And then they'd have gilding, memorandum, and cover making. That's where if you had other colors besides the main colors, like if you had gilded pages, that means some golden edge pages, or other colors of edge pages, you put that on. Memorandum would be other words you put onto a line page. Say that you wanted a doctor's book to have certain words on certain lines, such as the patient's name, the patient's identification, the date of entry, the date of exit, the disease, so forth. You could put little lines on the paper for that. And then cover making, you'd make the covers that would end up going on these. And forwarding means you were getting all the books lined up, ready to go into shipment. And then on the second floor, you had the shipping office and administration. And the very ground floor, you had the storage of all the paper. So a lot of things have to happen. You probably can guess, of course, these things were done in order. And it was done so well that he was, again, a very loved company.
And so what happened to this milling company?
Okay, the mill ended up going away. It was taken down. It's no longer there. I think it was taken down in the 1980s. All right, and they moved out to Chicopee because a company called Avery Dennison had bought them out. I think they bought in phases. So Avery bought them, the National Blank Book, and then Avery then bought Dennison. And so the production moved out to Chicopee. I think that was 1990s. And after that, by year 2000 or so, it had moved down to Texas. And then I think it moved across the border to Mexico, right across from its location in Texas. I think that's what happened to it. But it's still a loved company. There's still people around Holyoke that work there, and they can give their stories about the company itself.
And thank you, Robert, for educating us on your tours. And we want to thank our listeners for tuning in. You can also tune in to a large selection of our other podcasts and much more at his website. Again, that's holyokecanaltour.org. And again, you can email him directly for private tours or to inquire about anything else at bobcat4214, capital B, at yahoo.com. And be sure to keep an eye out for his upcoming 2024 season tours and more as they become available. Thank you for tuning in. I am your host, Carrie, and joining me is Holyoke's very own local historian and creator of the historical tours of Greater Holyoke, Robert Kalu. He offers both public and private tours, as well as presentations of the local canal systems, reservoirs, cemeteries, and churches, as well as various parks and streets in Holyoke, South Hadley, and Chicopee, Mass. Now you actually lead these tours and give these presentations yourself, is that correct?
Yes, and Eureka Blank Book is on the third level canal tour.
Okay, and so today he'll be educating us on the Eureka Blank Book Company. So what did the Eureka Blank Book make?
All right, it kind of tells you in the name. Eureka Blank Book made blank books, just like National Blank Book made blank books. But there's a difference between the company and the way they started off. National Blank Book was more vast, larger company, but blank book means you make a book that is ready to put information into. It doesn't mean every page is blank. In fact, it's the other way around. There's something on every page, and the reason why they're making books for like lab scientists, for medical doctors, for accountants, for professors or teachers. They're making books ready-made with lines and columns to get information put into it. Imagine being a lawyer and you need certain information. Imagine being a forensic scientist or a medical doctor. You need to put certain information in certain places. And your book has to be made in a certain way, certain size, in order that when it's passed along to the next authority up, it's according to its regulations. Even think of birth, marriage, and death records that are taken in by various communities across the United States. They need a certain format on their pages, all ready to put information in. And every state is different, and every year it changes. So these blank book companies have to be ready with information from different governmental entities, medical institutions, so forth, about what they require that year. So a blank book is really a full book. It's ready for data. And the Eureka Blank Book was able to make things more custom designed than even National Blank Book, who was better at other things. So we're going to talk about today where they were, when they started up, and whether they're still there, and then why is your custom design model so important, and did it work out? Now, Eureka Blank Book was a company that was on a certain street that's hard to do a tour on. It's on a dead-end street in a faraway place. But once I realized the company existed and what they did, then I said, wow, this is a great example.
Now, where were they located within Holyoke?
Okay, they're located on Winter Street, which is a street that's off of Appleton Street in South Holyoke. It's very end terminus, a dead end, but if you look out there, there's train tracks, and that's key because when they are ready to ship out or ship in, they're ready right on the train tracks, right by the freight yard. So they're a great location. So they're located in a mill that's on the left side of Winter Street as you travel down it. It's a large mill. If you look up to the top floor, it says Eureka right on it, top of it. And the building is still there, actually. And that key location gave them a really great advantage because they were one of the few mills that was next to the freight yard, which also means you're not next to the canal. So they weren't using canal power, so they had to get their power from somewhere else. And that will mean that when they started out in 1890, until 1895, there was no electricity around. So they had to do all their work off of printing presses that were handmade and hand-powered, which is okay. Most companies that made books did that. And they also had to, not for the administration, not use many lights, or they would have candle lights, and fine. But in 1895, that all changed, and so they just grew with the time over and over again.
So quickly, before we continue with the rest of our interview, just to fill our listeners in, if you want to sign up for any of his various tours or find out any more information, you can check out his website at holyokecanaltour.org. And there he has both videos of the various stops along each tour and also past and present photos of the historical sites throughout as well. And if you're interested in setting up a private tour, you can email him directly at bobcat4214, capital B, at yahoo.com. And they are perfect for fun educational outdoor activities for the whole family or for your group parties, especially the special occasions and get-togethers. And they are also good just for getting outdoors for the day. So getting back to our interview, does Eureka still exist?
Yes, they still exist. They're not in Holyoke anymore, but they still exist in the United States. And that is incredible. That means they're 133 years as of this year. And the reason why they still exist is because they changed with the times. As computers came around, they would make changes because that forced information into a different format. But there are professions that require all information be put on paper into a bound book and then it be signed. For instance, think of forensic scientists, think of chemists, think of medical doctors, think of certain types of lawyers, patent lawyers. You need to have this written on a piece of paper. Legally, it's not able to be entered into court if it's not written in that format. And if it's not done properly, and still birth records are done that way across the United States. All chemistry projects, all forensics. So people still need lots of lab designed rolled papers with custom columns to it, custom rows. And they change at the times because as anything changes, medicine, as you get this different equipment, you're going to get different professions or sub-professions, different kinds of doctors and nurses. They all need their things to change with the times, and as legal establishment changes, you got to collect different information and put it in there. And Eureka's been able to do that because they've always gone out to professions, say, what do you need? And then we'll do it. So I am very proud of them for being able to do this. It's a Holyoke-based company that expanded outwards and then moved, but they still exist in the world.
And what does the Eureka model mean to you?
All right, to me it means a great deal because I wish other companies were like this, to be a small to medium-sized company that can maneuver and change with the times. That is great, and there should be a lot more of that across the United States. Large companies tend to get bogged down. Let's do it this way, keep doing it this way. But if you're medium to small, you can change as society changes. Society, when it's based upon technology, as the United States is going to change greatly. And what you need changes, and you got to be ready. Oh, this is the next year. What do you want? And you do it, and you're ready for that change.
So thank you, Robert, for educating us on your tours. And we want to thank our listeners again for tuning in. And you can tune into a large selection of our other podcasts and much more at his website. And again, that's HolyokeCanalTour.org. And again, you can email him directly for private tours or to inquire about anything else at bobcat4214, capital B, at yahoo.com. And be sure to keep an eye out for his upcoming 2024 season tours and more as they become available. Thank you.